Hello, everyone. That's okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Isadora. I'm from Brazil. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Thank you for making time in your Saturday. And I want to talk a little bit about my experience as a Rotary Peace Fellow in my internship. And especially, I want to bring your attention to the option of rethinking how we do humanitarian aid. My AFE had a lot to do with trauma work, and that definitely got me thinking. So I'll propose a little bit of that as I explain my journey to you in the peace world. So, um, when we think about conflict and when we think about how conflict came to be, that was always something very puzzling for me. I studied international relations, and I want to understand how come people start conflicts, start wars, and why. So I put up in the top of the tree war, and then we have abuse, violence, conflict, and that was kind of like my path from international relations into moving into mediation, because I wanted to talk to people and understand what led them to that specific situation. And I think the main issue there is communication. But as I deepened my studies and I studied some psychology, I understood that sometimes people don't really know what their needs are. And that's a big issue when we are trying to negotiate and we are trying to bring peace. Uh, Digging deeper, I realized that actually trauma, so sort of in comparison to that other tree of how conflict came to be, this is sort of my path throughout my studies, from international relations to restorative justice, mediation, psychology, and somatic experiencing, which is where I did my AFE. So this is me in a Congress in Bali when I was working with Mediators Beyond Borders. And it was an amazing experience because I got to see people from different places and how they were leaders and really just helping their own communities, because very often when we talk about peace, we think it has to be something international and something really broad and maybe even abstract. But I actually realized each one of those speakers there were just like me, and they just realized, well, I can do this much, I can do this piece locally. So I moved to the Amazon border of Brazil, and I worked with refugees there. So I used my skills in mediation to try to create a safe space for people to communicate and relate. And my idea was mainly to empower the women who are there so that they can be included and don't feel so isolated in their new community in Brazil. But when I sat down with them and I allowed them to have that space to connect and talk, my main idea is to give them specific tools so that they would be able to, as soon as I allowed them to just be there, I realized they were not over everything that had happened to them. They really needed to talk about what had happened, and they needed to process those feelings, and they were not ready to enter a new community because they were still living in that trauma. They were still stuck in what had happened to them. It's coming. Okay. It's a coffee break. Okay. Well, soon you will see a different image. No? Okay. Well, in my journey working with the women in the shelter, I found out that I needed more training and I needed to understand better how could I assist those people. So I came to the University of Queensland and I applied to this program because of Morgan, because I wanted to understand more about mediation, about Indigenous practices, and especially how can we include people who are from different places and who have been through all of those issues. There you go. So Peter Levine is the doctor who made the term somatic experiencing, and that's a technique that is used to help people work through the traumatic experiences and hopefully live a better and healthier life. Because trauma is so misunderstood. Very often people don't see the signs, they don't really know how to deal with that. So leading causes of trauma is obviously war, natural disasters, and very adverse childhood experiences, but we never think about chronic stress, which is a main cause, and we all go through that sometimes, especially in the humanitarian field. So peace workers very often suffer from burnout. For example, in the place where I was working, we only had contracts for 3 months because people couldn't usually sustain that work for much longer. And what happens is that when you're traumatized, you're usually in that yellow and red zone. So it means you're not fully aware of your choices and you're making decisions out of fear. That's what makes people either more violent or more scared. So we want people to be able to be in the green zone so that they are not as violent and they're not making decisions based on the fear that they have of something they don't understand, of different people. So, like I said, trauma responses, you sometimes freeze and sometimes you feel like you're in danger, even if you're not. So we want to bring people to a safe space, social engagement, when you meet with friends, when you're relaxed, for example. And what happens is that people who are deeply traumatized, they keep only on those 2 stages and they're not able to move from that. So I went to Germany because they have one of the biggest somatic experiences center there. And I was able to be in person, but I was working with a virtual team. And we were working especially to translate all this material that they have that we call the emotional first aid kit. And it was in the task force for the Ukraine. It was called the Ukrainian task force. And our team was composed. So this is the material. So yes, that's me. And we had the European and the international co-chairs, and my supervisor, Melissa Sinclair, who is the crisis response coordinator. She used to work for USA, and she came from the humanitarian field to the trauma field work, and sort of in that same, we really align in that idea that when we work through what people really need and we give them the possibility to have a better life and to feel calm and to make better decisions, then we are fostering peace instead of from interventions that sometimes are top bottom but long term don't create sustainable peace. So, a brief overview of the work we've done in the Ukrainian task force. We had resources, we had webinars, and we had what we call Resilience Connection, which was really an opportunity for Ukrainians to connect and to rebuild that community that they had lost because of the war. So some people were still in Ukraine, others were in Poland, Hungary, Germany. But they were all able to talk about and process what had happened to them, which led to a better opportunity of their integration in new places or just feeling calmer and more stable in if they were in the country still. We also had some wonderful volunteers who did one-on-one sessions. And we translated a lot of material with our amazing volunteers from across the globe. We translated to different languages, and it was over 71,000 words. We translated Scope, which is that material that I'm going to have displayed on my table if you all want to see it later, which is just basic steps for you to calm down your nervous system, and other, especially picture books and other things that kids would use to process their trauma, because it's different and you can't just tell them to feel calm, or sometimes they cannot understand the full complexity of what's happening to them. So in the end, we did a conference. That was my main project there, to really gather the knowledge of 1 year of the task force and understand the best practices and exchange, what we could learn from the people on the ground and the work that they were doing. Finally, I want to leave you out with a reflection of why this is so important. When we're talking about peace, we have to understand that everything we do and the way that we act, that affects people. And when we are more peaceful within ourselves, we're able to create a more sustainable peace within the global system. Thank you so much.